Hi, I'm Fred Waugh, and one of my projects as Canada's Parliamentary Poet Laureate is to produce a series of short videos to help make contemporary Canadian poetry more accessible. These recordings illustrate a range of poetry that reflects the identities, places, and modes of poetic writing in Canada. Besides the recording themselves, be sure to check out the supplementary material as an aid to understanding, teaching, and enjoying this poetry. As our first Canadian Poet Laureate George Bowring once said, "Listen up."
Hi, I'm Douglas Barbour. I live in Edmonton, Alberta. As a poet, I often write poems in response to art, music, many other things. In this case, or today, I'm going to respond to recordings of jazz, which I love, and I have a number of these poems in this little book called Recording Dates. The first one is May 15, 1953. Perdido, but nothing's ever. They may salt the fields. Someone wrote it down. Someone got it on tape. The intro to Salt Peanuts. As my worthy constituent took up his horn and all the breath he needed, and then blew the highest note you'd ever heard. There are some things we are meant to know, to hear. The tale told over and over, and you read it too 10 years later. Those few hours are part of your memory now, your secret history. Thousands listening into the wee small hours as 5 musicians from somewhere else made hot music hotter and faster and more brilliant, till the house lights came on and the audience was too small for the stories later. A listener weeps now with frustration, wanting to believe the night was that full, that more of the citizens in straight-laced Toronto knew their greatness and wanted to hear A Night in Tunisia and other classics to be there, to be hearing it. Again, now. October 26, 1956. It means something more than never stepping into the same note twice. They entered and enter still, a space made of sound, but still my heart feels blues notes we were paid no never mind to focusing attention wholly through them to 4 ways of being precisely there. In the breath and the melody made now in your mind, listening and playing both. You own it and let it go, knowing with sweet abandon each note is way beyond possession, and even leaving the stands a way of taking a stand. That theme runs through every improvised solo, and now trains rushing up and down scales where angels fear to trace. The blues tells all, tells nothing. How it got there, gathering shards of Ahmad's story, or Miles' story, or all their stories are just the blues writ large against the backdrop of white America, half a continent drenched in it that they can't hear in Nelson or Salt Lake City or even New York City sometimes. The stark and bitter news of a cabaret card taken becomes a theme for another lengthy solo and the silence it bears. October 9 and 10, 1974. Death behind or before this chord, and that one interchangeable then, the final sounding expansive horn of a flower or dilemma opening into night, all contra in a prayer so profound or far away, how great to open sky through which the last bird spreads its wings and soars beyond the moon. October 9 and 10, 1974. Death comes in many guises. A black bird and a white whale equally partake of the great, the intense and final prayer. Flower of the atom, atomy of the flower. Prayer is both response to and refusal of the great journey now begun, whale and bird both taking the shortest route possible to death. And finally, January 12, 1956. I was 16 in Montreal, and you'd never guess who my friends were. Anyway, I'll tell you, all I knew of jazz wouldn't have filled a single notebook page. I want to go back to that long ago and change things so the world then matches my nostalgic, eclectic dreaming. How else plan to be somewhere these cats were playing? I'd wished to have heard them live, but didn't even know their names then, didn't know that music. It wasn't what I heard on the radio. At that time, we listened to the hit parade. It wasn't even real rock and roll yet, was just something striving for music without realizing it. Gigantic figures in their world of mostly unheard blues, they played America even if most refused to hear. This was the jazz life, and one year's records or gigs floated away a memory of kisses and as hard to recall once the lips are gone. You know it too, and whether opera or jazz, we can only receive its gifts when we no longer depend on them. Or anyone needs them? Put on your high-heeled sneakers, dance with me to the end of these brand new old times.